We know that the last couple of weeks have been a major challenge for us. It's just been like one thing after another for 2021. So we are hosting this emergency meeting. We were supposed to be off this month, but after everything that's happened, we said we need to do this. If you're anything like me, you're feeling kind of like this cartoon. I found this on Facebook. It is like perfect. It says exactly how I feel. Like after COVID and tornadoes and school threats, oh my, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to know what happens in 2022, but I do know that we came through it stronger. And whatever happens, we will be ready. We just have to take it one day at a time. So just a little bit about us. We are AABSF, the African American Black Students and Families, the subcommittee of the Upper Dublin School District's Excellence and Equity Subcommittee. We are a volunteer parent-run group, and we are committed to keeping parents informed, addressing district challenges, and showcasing student excellence. Tonight, we are specifically here to discuss the power of words. It is imperative that our kids, before they post especially, I know adults are, we're a little different, but we all really need to recognize that there are consequences, legal, psychosocial, emotional, spiritual, there are all levels of consequences that happen when we post things, when we say things, when we write things. Everything matters. Words matter. There is a proverb that says the tongue can speak words that bring life or death, and those who love to talk must be ready to accept what it brings. And that is so very true. My mommy heart would like to believe that last week's TikTok challenge and even the incident before was an issue where someone said something but didn't really mean it, but the consequences got a lot larger than they intended. So in order to prevent this from happening again, I did not like having to weigh, do I want to send my kid to school or do I not? I did not like having to weigh that. But to prevent that, hopefully we can learn some things about what is good to say, what is not good to say, some of those consequences. And I would be remiss if I did not send a huge thank you to Dr. Ortiz, Dr. Yanni, Upper Dublin Police Department, and all of the Upper Dublin School District, families, staff, teachers, they alike, for getting us through safely. So let's get started. Tonight's panelists, I rallied them last week. They hopped on board, and I'm so happy they're here. We have Ms. Janae Johnson, who is a teen therapist with Teen Therapy Talk. We have Staff Sergeant Andrew Sanborn, say that 3 times fast, who is the Community Response Unit Supervisor. And we also have Benjamin Picker, who is a local attorney, and they each do a quick intro. So we're going to start, Janae, with you. Just do a quick intro. What motivated your yes for tonight? And one favorite anything.
Oh, hi, everyone. So my name is Janae Johnson. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I serve Philadelphia and New Jersey currently. I've been in private practice working with teenagers and middle schoolers for 7 years. And prior to that, I've worked in family-based, residential, mandated anger management. So I have a very long history of working with youth, and I've actually been a part of that social media rise, if you will, because it wasn't as popular years ago, but I was there when exposing first started happening and cyberbullying and all of those things became really pervasive in schools. So I have a lot of experience with this. I'm also an author, and I felt it was important to be here tonight because I don't think a lot of our students have an understanding around social media words and language. And honestly, I think sometimes parents need a little bit more support as well, understanding social media and how it may be harmful to your child, although they may ask for it often. So I'm here just to provide some insight and support around conversations, because I'm a big fan of information and conversation. And my favorite color is pink.
Awesome.
Is that like a favorite thing? Okay.
What appropriate color for a teen talk therapist.
Thank you. That's my favorite.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Staff Sergeant Sanborn.
Yeah, call me Andy.
Okay.
I've been with the police department for over 25 years. I've served in a lot of different positions. I was a street shift supervisor for a long time. I was with the SWAT team for 13 years. I've been a use of force and firearms instructor for a very long time. Currently the community response unit supervisor, and my unit is responsible for a lot of the outreach and education that the police department does with the citizenship of the township. We're also involved in school safety outreach. One of my officers, Corporal Madrak, coordinates all of the emergency drills that the school district does, lockdowns, evacuations, intruder drills, and all those things. So we're kind of intimately involved with this sort of thing when a threat happens. So if I can help to, give information and get buy-in from our residents and our students and our parents, that would be great, because it helps the police department, it helps the community, and brings us all together. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I love Christmas cookies. My daughter bakes Christmas cookies every year. But yesterday when I came home from work, I walked in, I smelled the cookies baking, but it was my wife, and she was baking the cookies. So now I have my daughter's cookies to look forward as well. And that's totally awesome, because now I've got double the quantity.
Winning, and you deserve, after a year like this year, Andy, you definitely deserve a double portion of cookies. So thank you for joining us. And last but definitely not least, Benjamin Picker.
Hello, call me Ben. I am Ben Picker. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for nearly 18 years. I currently have my own firm, Donahue and Picker. We're based in Norristown, but we practice mainly in the 5-county area around here. I'm a litigation attorney, but our firm does many things that are relevant to this, including civil rights, family law, and criminal defense, including juvenile criminal defense. I am a local guy here. I live in Fort Washington. I have 2 kids in the school system, an 8th grader and a 5th grader who is currently displaced over to Thomas Fitzwater due to the tornado, and both of whom are very happy that winter break has begun. And I see many names here on here that I recognize, so I'm happy to have a lot of people that I know here, ready to listen and learn. About me, I guess the one thing I would say, I'm a huge hockey and Flyers fan. How's that?
I think so. I did some research on your website, and I did see the hockey gloves. So good job.
Happy you didn't use that photo. So
that's awesome. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Like I said, we reached out just last week, and you guys rallied together, and I'm sure we have some great information for our students and our families. Tonight, just so we're clear, we're to discuss what we, the people, we as family members and students individually can do. We cannot discuss district specific information because A, we don't have those details, and B, tonight is more about the bigger picture, bigger than just the school threats that happened recently. It's also personal, social media attacks that happen on the Daily Squabble. Those things matter. So we have 6.5 questions. We'll go through each of those. Those questions will remain on the slide, so you can kind of think about them as you're hearing the answers. And we hope that at the end of tonight, everyone will learn something, share something, and think thrice before they post. We don't just want you thinking twice. We want you to think again and then think again to see how that can affect and how it can be translated, even if online. So without further ado, let's begin. First question, what constitutes a credible threat? And that comes with the heart of, as a parent, when I got notification that there was a threat, slight panic ensued. And then when I heard it's deemed not credible, I can't say I felt totally okay, but I had to trust the process, and I'm glad that I did. So what exactly constitutes a credible threat?
I guess, Nikki, I could start this off. As far as threats are concerned, so a threat is something that is a cause for concern for the parents or the students in the school. There's varying degrees of threats, and when we want to see if we want to determine if we have a credible threat, there's kind of various factors that we have to weigh in. First, we want to verify that the threat actually occurred, that it isn't just a rumor, that there's actually a legitimate source for it. Then we try to identify where the source of the threat is, who the threat is coming from. And then we want to look at if the source of the threat has a means to carry the threat out, if there's actually a legitimate possibility that they could accomplish what they're trying to do, and determine if there's a motive. So, you know, the way that we do this is we have detectives who investigate these things, and we collaborate to a large degree with the school to try to get a grip on the history of the student, their age, their mental capacity, history of what they've done at the school previously. So we take a lot of factors into account to try to determine if a threat is credible. And we always base our decision on a credible threat in conjunction with the opinion of the school. So we have to work as a team, because clearly the police department doesn't know every kid. And we rely on that partnership with the school to help us as a source of information on threats and those who pose them.
Fantastic. Thank you. So if I'm hearing right, I heard that you have to make sure that it was said, which makes sense. We have to verify. Then we have to check and do research on the mental capacity of the student. And for that, you depend on the school and that student's history. And then you determine if they have the tools to do what it is they were going to say.
Correct.
Okay.
And that involves not only contacting the school, but we'll also generally reach out and contact the parents of the student directly and see what their home situation is. You know, every source of information that we can come up with, we'll usually avail ourselves of.
Okay, which actually that leads to a second question that was not on the list. If you're calling the parents, does that make parents kind of in hot water if their student is in hot water? Not
generally.
Okay.
I found that most of the parents take these things pretty seriously, and they're concerned. They don't want their child to be involved in this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So they want to make sure that if they need help, that they get it.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to add to that very quickly. You know, we saw the incident that happened recently, the Oxford school shooting, where, you know, it appears, and obviously they're innocent until proven guilty, but they appeared to have, along with perhaps the school, ignored a serious threat of a potential school shooting, and those parents were charged. It is very uncommon for parents to be charged for something that their child does. It really has to arise to a level of a reckless disregard of the likelihood of some crime, serious crime with serious harm occurring, for that to happen, in my experience.
Yeah, and I just want to add, psychologically speaking, right? I think there are usually signs that children may be struggling. They may write different things in their essays or their friends, or they post certain things online. And I think part of the credible threat piece for me is when it's time to answer questions about your child's mental state. I think sometimes parents can find it hard to be honest because they feel shame or guilt around maybe their child's behavior or how they feel, or they think they're going to be shamed or labeled. But sometimes there are indicators, but we might be a little afraid to share them. So I think in terms of a credible threat, we also have to be honest with, you know, ourselves, even about how our child may behave. Even if they only behave that way when they're angry, we still want to be honest about that and not feel guilt, so that we can make sure that everyone's safe, including your child.
All great points. That is awesome. And actually you've answered some of my future questions, but we'll answer them again. So thank you. Next question. Is there a difference between a threat and a terroristic threat?
Do you want me to talk about that, Ben?
I mean, I have something I'd be happy to go first, and you could fill in the blanks if you want.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Yes, there's a difference. There's absolutely a difference, although there is overlap, obviously, between the terms. You know, one word is in the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a threat can be, anything can be construed as a threat, but for it to be a terroristic threat, which is a term of art, it's a crime. It's the title of section 2706 of the Crimes Code of Pennsylvania. There really has to be an intent or a reckless disregard of the possibility or likelihood that it's going to cause it's going to terrorize somebody. For instance, writing something on a school wall that someone's going to shoot up the school on December 17th, I certainly think would qualify as a terroristic threat. One 12-year-old telling the other that he's going to beat him up on the school field at recess, probably not. Kids will be kids, and certainly I don't think Andy would go arrest that kid for it. Yes, there's a difference, and really the difference is there has to be a true intent or reckless disregard of the likelihood that it would actually terrorize somebody else. And there does not have to be direct communication. So leaving a note on a wall could potentially be sufficient if it's sufficiently terroristic in nature. Andy?
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. The only thing I would add is that the terroristic threats statute itself is it covers a kind of a wide range of threats, and they vary in the severity of the crime depending on what occurs. So, usually it has to be a threat of some kind of violence for it to fall under terroristic threats, and it either directly threatening or indirectly threatening can both be eligible as a terroristic threat. But the more serious terroristic threats are when it causes the evacuation of a building, or when it causes a serious public inconvenience, like something notable. So it can actually vary up to a felony, potentially, if it's something of considerable significance.
And I would point out that, it's only in the situations of a felony that arises to a serious crime where a minor could be charged as an adult. And if a terroristic threat were serious enough, it certainly could be a felony and could end up in that realm, although unlikely that it would, unless it was truly a really serious terroristic threat.
Right. You guys are actually answering my next question. So before we go there, Janae, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the fellas handled that one.
I think they did. All right. I just want to keep it. All right. That is another question, but before we get to the consequences, and I think you touched on this, are we liable if we forward or share a threat? Or what if we hear one and do nothing about it? Where does our liability stand?
So let me use the word liable. Liable is usually utilized not in the criminal context, but the civil context of a civil lawsuit. So if we're talking about being civilly liable, probably not for this kind of thing. If we're talking about criminal liability, which I think we are here, merely forwarding a threat, it's really going to depend on what your intent was. If your intent is to spread alarm and to be, in your own right, terroristic in nature, certainly you could be charged for that. If it's really an intention of spreading the word that there's been a threat, and you're just trying to inform the community or others about it, no, that's not going to be a terroristic threat in that situation. And I think most people would be able to recognize which of those two things is going on. I know with this past situation, the December 17th stuff, kids were passing this along on social media. There's no way any of them were going to be charged criminally for doing that. That's, kids are, when they hear something like that, are going to spread it amongst their friends, but not to have the intention of terrorizing, but to say, wow, did you see this? And I'm sure that's exactly what was going on here.
Good.
Yeah, with the reporting of threats, as far as the school staff goes, the police department has a memorandum of understanding with the school, which provides for the sharing of information and protects them from liability in the sharing of information, such as with threats and that kind of thing. Legally, there's the FERPA Act, which is the Family Education Rights and Protections Act. It causes some concern occasionally with school staff, but in this case, it really doesn't apply. There's no liability for school staff telling the police department about a threat, because the police department isn't interested in the child's educational records, and the school district isn't providing them. They're just giving information on threats, and there's no protection for an individual committing a crime in the FERPA Act. As far as the reporting of threats by other parties, students or parents, as Ben said, we're not. Of course, it depends on the spirit in which it's shared. Usually, it's shared to report it for the reason of letting us know so that we can intervene if this threat should turn out to be a factual one. As far as the liability for not doing it, really, it's a moral and ethical question as to whether you're obligated to do this. We have to, our primary purpose as a police department involved with the schools, primarily we want to make sure everyone is safe and can attend school, prosper, grow, learn in a safe environment. And it's of critical importance to us, and it's ethically and morally imperative that if people are aware of threats that they report them. Unless we were able to show that someone was doing it purposely for some improper, malicious reason, we always accept threats and investigate them fully. And we never try to discourage people from reporting such information to us. It's critically important to our mission that we have intelligence on these things whenever we can get it.
And from a civil liability perspective, just to add on to that very quickly, school employees, we have trust in our school employees that they're going to do the right thing, especially in Upper Dublin. If they hear about a threat, that they would report it to the police or take other appropriate action. But generally, schools being government entities are going to be protected from liability in various ways. I don't want to bore you all, but there's the political subdivision tort claims act immunity. There's qualified immunity under federal law for civil rights violations. Chances are a school employee is probably not going to be held civilly liable for not reporting a threat, but they may be. And, putting that all aside, we would expect, and I'm sure they would do what morally they should do anyway.
Thank you. Janae, anything you want to add?
I think the only thing I was going to add, I know, is that it's important to teach our youth about ethics and morality, because it's not something that they inherently possess right now. If I'm just going to be honest, as I work with a lot of middle schoolers and teenagers, they struggle with that. Having access to social media, and in this country, it is very individual. So they really struggle to think about how actions can impact others. So even when we think about cyberbullying and all of those things and how these things spread a lot on social media, I think also if we had more conversations with our kids around ethics and, empathy and compassion, then maybe certain things wouldn't spread as fast and wouldn't become so trendy and popular, because they might think about how this impacts other people or impacts the school and impacts all of those things, where I think those things are not necessarily being thought of enough.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Next question. What are the potential legal consequences, which you actually kind of touched on, between a non-credible threat versus a credible threat?
The one thing I'll say on this, and I think we've kind of gone over this already with everything else we've said, is, students, just like parents and everybody else in this country, have First Amendment rights, right? We're allowed to say whatever we want to say for the most part. Students' ability to speak, especially in a school, is a little bit more limited. They're not allowed to disrupt the educational process, but the line is really drawn. We've all heard the term, you can't scream, fire in a crowded theater. And that's really what a lot of these criminal statutes that criminalize speaking are directed to, that or worse. So that's why a threat has to really be a true, credible threat intended to terrorize, for the most part, for it to be criminalized. Otherwise, I think the Supreme Court would step in and ultimately do something about it. But I think we've really answered, kind of the question about what's the difference between credible or non-credible threat. If it's a non-credible threat, it can still be terroristic in nature if it's intended to terrorize. If it's credible, that makes it even more important to do something about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, if it's a credible threat, the police department is certainly going to investigate and prosecute it much more strenuously. Um, but one thing I would like to point out, in general, the juvenile justice system is based on rehabilitation. The police are not out to arrest kids. Kids are not just sent to prison. Juvenile justice is all about helping them to learn how to make the right choices in life, giving them second chances. The juvenile justice system understands that kids have a certain impulsivity to them, that they're working, as they mature, that they're going to grow up and learn how to control that, interact with adult society. Of course, it is important to educate the kids that there are consequences to this, and that threats to the school are not a joke, and they can't be looked on like that. So in the juvenile justice system, from our perspective, threats to the school are something that we take fairly seriously. I know that recently, for last Friday, the 17th, the round of threats that was going around, Maple Shade, New Jersey, actually arrested a 12-year-old kid in relation to threats that were made last Friday, charged with terroristic threats, cyber harassment, and false public alarm. And their crimes are a little different in New Jersey, but it is important that we understand we have to focus on the educational aspect to make sure kids know that there are consequences if they're going to engage in threats like this, potentially.
Yes, that's exactly why we're hosting tonight. And I believe I understood there was a Pennsylvania young lady, I think in Lancaster area, who was arrested as well, linked to this. So we're trying to prevent that, because we know sometimes we say things not thinking, and this is not a fun trouble. I think the next question kind of touches on your world, Janae, and what are the psycho-emotional consequences of threats, either by the giver or the target?
This is a loaded question, and we probably don't have enough time for me to answer all of the things. But I think what I often see when I've worked with students that are trying to expose or cyberbullying, right? They're usually crying out for help of some sort. They have some emotional disturbance, they need some support, they can feel lonely, they can feel disconnected, they can feel distant. And one thing a lot of our kids have access to is social media and the phone, and they know how to work it. They know what to say to get attention. They know what to say to, garner large reactions. And so if a child isn't feeling that confident with themselves, if there are some emotional issues that could be happening at home, some very common things are like parents separating or parents moving, parents getting into new relationships, or maybe they lost their best friend. Those kind of things can prompt children, as simple as they may be in some cases, to want attention and to garner a reaction. So for them, they're already probably experiencing a trauma. And then once this comes out, they will probably experience more trauma, because they don't think that far in terms of what the consequences are. And so they may not want to be arrested, right? I don't think any kid really goes outside or
I think I'll get arrested today.
I'm going to get on Instagram today because I want to get arrested. That's probably never, ever happening. But when that reality sets in, it's going to be traumatizing more than likely for that child. And again, it's going to be trauma for the target, right? Because depending on the target, depending on the type of threats, it can be continuous trauma for that student, and they may not know how to interact. And then you may have students afraid to go back to school, which is supposed to be a safe place, which is supposed to be a place of learning academically, socially, and emotionally. And now I have to be on guard 24/7. And physically, literally, their bodies are tensed and on guard, which makes it hard for them to form appropriate connections and attachments at the school, which makes it hard for them to have a clear, focused mind to think, correctly academically and to get those good grades, which makes it hard for them to have compassion for other people as well. because they're worried about self and they're trying to self-preserve in most cases, you know. And what I often see too is sometimes students will pair with other students that they think can protect them.
Mhm.
And that's how you kind of see large cliques happen. And then, you know, it just kind of becomes a big thing where there's like a group of kids that might be, you know, terrorizing other kids or just trying to do things so that they can, you know, stay protected because they're scared. So there are a lot of psycho-emotional consequences of threats, either by the giver or the target. And it can really just impact everything, the way that they're able to think, their behavior in school, trauma. And it could be because of trauma that's already brewing and now we're seeing the behavior, or after the threat, we can see a lot of trauma happen.
Gotcha.
So that's just an overview of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there's time for that.
Right, and that was a great point that even after, if they are taken into custody, that's a trauma in itself. That's like a further trauma on top of the trauma that we don't often think of. I know that we said we would save questions until the end, but a great one just came in and it actually piggybacks off of our last question. It comes from Jeanette. Thank you for your question. It says, are there laws or school rules that protect concerned students that report a threat that is ultimately found to be non-credible from retaliation?
Well, I know, Jeanette, I'll answer this. If your student has any, so I get a lot of threats as a therapist at a school and in my private practice, but as my role in therapist in school, the kids will come tell me everything that someone said on TikTok or Instagram. Oh, you know, we have a group chat. I get all the tea, as they say. And usually when I go share it, I never disclose who told me. I just tell the kids, I also have social media and can find out things. And I usually just leave it at that and it's fine. So I know in my experience as a counselor, that's how I continue to maintain my relationships and protect the other children that's coming to me with a credible threat or a non-credible threat. So that's just what I do in my therapy lens. And I know sometimes the counselors also get wind of the threats before, you know, police officers do as well. So yeah.
Something else that's very important to us is the safe to say system, where you can anonymously report these things. And even the police department doesn't find out who the report came from unless they want to make it public known to us. But it is critically important that there's a mechanism. I mean, that's one of the most important ways that we become aware of these threats is either through school counselors, teachers who hear them, or through the Safe to Say program.
And Andy, could you elaborate maybe on the Safe to Say? I think, isn't there an app for that as well?
It is, it's an app.
People aren't aware of what that is and how you can access it. It might be helpful to elaborate on that.
Hold on for 1 second.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, it's okay, but I have a ready source of the information right here. There's an app, a website, and a phone number. And I believe that information is made public to all the students in the school, I believe.
Yes.
I believe so too.
Fortunately for me, my wife happens to be a school resource officer, and she has a wealth of information.
Awesome. So our chat room is blowing up, and 1 second, let me read it. They said it's linked on the district website.
It's a readily available app that the kids can easily get and make reports if they need to. And we investigate all of these. They come in directly to our police station.
Right. And not to be too district specific, but the Upper Dublin, Dr. Yanni is here. Thank you, Dr. Yanni, for your notes. He's saying that this Safe to Say app is available for students grade 6 to 12. So our middle school and high school students. And as a parent, I do believe there are flyers posted all over the building about Safe to Say. So.
Of course, students should be made aware that it should only be used when they, truly believe there's something problematic and not to abuse it, because that can lead to some of the things that we are talking about. So
exactly. All great points. Thank you. And again, why we're holding tonight, so we can kind of weed through, is this credible? Is it not? Should I say something? Should I not? So thank you for that. Next questions. What should we do? Like streamline. What should we do if we see, think, feel, or hear a threat we'll pause there and then we'll come back to the second question.
Well, from the police department's perspective, we want the threat to be reported to us because we want to investigate, determine if it's credible, and collaborate with the school district to determine what kind of response that the police department is going to have. A lot of times it'd be an investigation with the student and the family of the student. Perhaps we determine it's not a credible threat. Perhaps if we determined it was a credible threat, in that case, we're going to be talking with the school district and determining how we're going to handle it. At the very least, when we have information that there are threats, we have a highly enhanced officer presence at the schools. Our officers have a lot of training with handling school threats and the threat of active shooter violence. God forbid that we would have to ever deal with such a thing in real life, but our officers are very well trained in it. One thing that we've done for at least the last decade is our officers make routine stops as a matter of course in all of the schools virtually every day.
Nice.
To make contacts with the students and the people that are around, make contact with the school administrators, be familiar with the layout of the school, and just know what's going on in the school. And then when we determine, once we have something reported, there's a tremendous collaboration that goes on between the police department and the school to determine how we're going to handle it. And the school district has always been extremely helpful with that.
Great. And the next question, unless someone has something to add, is there anything we can do to prevent people from wanting to make or even act on these threats?
Yes, and that's the question I wanted to answer. I got so excited, I took myself off of mute early. I was like, oh, I can't wait. So one of the things that I truly, truly wholeheartedly believe in is listening to your children. If they say they're tired, if they say they're stressed, if they say they're not feeling well, be curious, right? I know we can think that kids are always trying to make excuses, but they don't have the language adults have to say they're overwhelmed or they're stressed out or they don't feel adequate or they are lacking confidence. And so we as the adults have to be a bit more curious and ask more probing questions instead of deciding they're being lazy, instead of deciding that they're just trying to get out of something. They might be trying to get out of something, but it could be a reason beyond why they're trying to get out of it, right? I know one thing I've seen virtually is a lot of children didn't do well with virtual learning. And so their confidence is low going back into school, trying to maintain certain grades, and then thinking about college. It's just a lot happening for them, and we're not really taking a step back and realizing that the pandemic has impacted them in a certain way too. So we need to just kind of extend that grace to them as well. So one, if they say that they're feeling sad, depressed, suicidal, any of those things, you want to take those claims seriously the very first time. You don't need to try to wait to see if they get out of it, if they grow out. Take it seriously, take action the very first time, because this is what happens. When a child comes to their parent or their safe person and says, oh, hey, I'm really feeling this way, and you disregard it, that diminishes their spirit. And over time, those feelings will probably continue to increase, but now they can't come to you about it. Now they don't feel safe to do that. And they're going to find another way to try to, self-soothe. But if you decide to take action the very first time, they're going to feel loved, they're going to feel protected, they're going to feel like you care and that you're in tune with them. And more than likely, if they're still struggling, they're going to continue to come to you. So you will have an opportunity to help them navigate what they're feeling and what they're going through. I know we all like Marvel and X-Men. Everyone has a villain origin story, right? So that's what we don't want to do. We don't want any villain origin stories. We want to hear our kids out. We want to get them the support that they need, even if we didn't have these kind of supports as adults, because adults love to say that. I didn't have all of this going on and I didn't have to do that. We get it. But give the kids what they need today, okay? Because we want peace. Okay, yes. That's all I have to say.
And the kids have social media today, which we didn't have, so it's a different level of permeation.
Completely different level.
I have to say, I love your answer, Janae. I'll throw in just a little bit along similar lines. You know, I'm a parent. I still have one kid in high school, and my other is graduated. But things that parents can do to help with this situation is to have conversation with their kids about social media and about the expectations and what's appropriate and what isn't. You know, social media is a lot more prevalent now than it was 5 years ago. And kids don't know. They're being exposed to all sorts of things, and they don't even know necessarily who they're being exposed to on social media. The parents have to take an active role to be involved with make sure their kids have a basic foundation of knowledge on what they should and shouldn't do. Because not just in regard to school threats, but things that you post on social media can potentially stay with you for a long time. You don't want to
say that one more time, Sergeant.
Things that you post on social media can potentially stay with you for a long time. You know, it doesn't just disappear once you've typed it into the internet. Another thing is that, especially when kids are younger, parents should not be afraid to monitor what they're doing on the internet. As a parent, it's your responsibility to check out, use the family sharing or whatever app you have if your child has a phone or whatever. But keep an eye on what they're doing. And not just to make sure they're not doing anything wrong, but to make sure that they're not being bullied or harassed via the internet. You know, the social media opens up a wide range of things. The police department actually has a class that we put on a couple times a year about internet safety and bullying and harassment on the internet. We'll be teaching that at the library probably sometime over the winter if we get the opportunity and COVID doesn't stop us. And the last thing that I would throw out there is parents can really help by modeling behavior. So if you are constantly on social media, and your children are going to see that, and they're going to be constantly on social media as well. So put the devices down if you can, and have some non-electronic interaction. Goes a long way.
It does. And because social media isn't going anywhere, I always like to just throw in this tip to parents around being curious. So to just piggyback off what Sergeant Sanborn said, if you can't put your phone down, be curious. Ask your teenager or your child to teach you something. Right? Say, oh, I want to learn how to do this, or show me how TikTok works. That's going to give you insight, you know, the inside story. You're going to be like the TMZ here of figuring out what's going on behind the scenes, how they work it. And when I teach this in terms of internet safety, I always say it's important to know what social media platform your teen is on the most. And knowing how to work it, because if there is a crisis, if there is an emergency, you don't want to be fumbling on how to work TikTok. You want to know how TikTok already functions so you can get the information you need, right? You want to know how Snapchat already works so you can get the information you need. You want to know Instagram. You probably want to know if your teen actually has their friends' phone numbers, or if they just message on Instagram or Snapchat, because a lot of kids don't even have their friends' actual phone numbers. They only send messages via Instagram and Snapchat. And that would be news to a lot of people, I'm sure. But that they're like, oh, I don't have their phone number. We just talk on Instagram. So be curious, ask them questions about how they connect with their friends, which platform they're on the most, ask them why they like it. And just on a chill day, ask them to show you what they do and how they create a video. Like, oh, I saw this trend. How would you do that? Like, how do you go on TikTok and do it? Just so you can get more information from them and bond, and no one's getting in trouble.
Nice. You just gave me an idea to have yet another session on social media training. Because, oh my goodness. So I will share a personal, I am that parent. When my kids earned their social media, first of all, they had to earn the right to have a social media account, and they had to be of a certain age. I had them sign like a 6-page detailed contract of this is what social media is, this is what's appropriate, this is what's not, this is what will happen if we see things that are not. And also don't feel ashamed if something is said on your page that is not necessarily reflective of you, because you can't control what you see. But if you see something inappropriate, either delete it or show us, and then we'll deal with it. And they do know that as long as they live here and they're not paying bills, they have no rights. Their account is my account. I don't know how fair that is, but like Sergeant Sanborn said, this world, we have so many people who are posing as children and trying to pull information, and our kids are so trusting. And it's kind of hard to have that balance as a parent to say, okay, be kind to everyone, and then at the same time, don't trust anyone. It's like, it's kind of neurotic. So these are all great points, and thank you for bringing them up. Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
I do not.
Okay.
Said it well.
Awesome.
Oh, I guess I'd be happy if anybody wants a contract drafted up with their kids. I'm happy to, take a retainer. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's
yes. Hey, it works. That's why we're here. No, that's a good idea. Have one drafted by an attorney. I am not an attorney. Yes, it's awesome. All right. So that was actually the last question. So I want to thank everyone for their time. We dealt with a pretty heavy issue. I know it's the last day before winter break, but we just wanted to make sure everyone hops into this 11 days with our kids. That's a long time. It's a long time for them to be in their heads, in their rooms, on social media, or whatever it is they're doing. Take full advantage of car rides, talk to them, fill their space with positivity and good stuff, because the world is combating them with so many other things. Ben, Andy, Janae, do we have anything else that we want to add?
I think we covered everything.
Okay.
I think we did. I think another fun activity. I also have some resources on my website, which is teentherapytalk.com, like journals and just social media contracts, actually, and some other things. But I think one thing I want to encourage you all to do is be more intentional. Have like a jam session with your kid. Ask them what kind of music are they listening to. Share some of your favorite songs with them. Listen to the lyrics. Ask them why they like the song. I think one thing is that we are also busy and we're not really stopping to connect. And sometimes those answers to preventing things are just simply in connection. So have some fun over the break.
Yes, thank you. And we will end with a
I will,
video.
if I can.
Oh,
if
go
I
ahead.
can. Let me throw in one more thing.
Absolutely.
The police department is very strongly involved with the community, and we have a lot of resources, and not everything is about making arrests and trying to prosecute crimes. I do want everyone to know that we have a strong working relationship with the Montgomery County Mobile Crisis Unit, and we have resources with children and youth and a whole variety of other county agencies. We have 2 different programs that the police department community resources unit started. A bridge program, which connects people to mental health resources.
Great.
And we also have a hub program, which is a countywide clearinghouse for social issues, that we have access to all your various county agencies. And we welcome people to contact us if they need assistance with anything. If their child needs some psychiatric help and they don't know where to turn, we have resources for that.
That is awesome. And as if you've seen the presentation, Andy, my next slide speaks just to that. We have a saying at AABSF called check your mental like your dental. You have to make sure you nurture your space daily, whether that's meditation, running, arts, sports, whatever it is your thing is. Just make some space, just get in some silence and check your mind. And if you feel like you're having any trouble, check in with a professional and let them help you. Do not feel shame, because we all get in spaces where we feel overwhelmed, and you don't have to do it alone. So I would like to end with this video of a young man in a school that is reflective of most of our children. And I hope it ends on a positive note and starts off a great holiday week. So we'll hear this, and then we'll say happy holidays, happy new year, and enjoy.
Let me talk to you about the way I live. Got priorities put in place. I'm a real good kid. future and I have a master plan. I'm giving all I have to my schoolwork and this cause my future's in my hands, can't you see? I have a master plan, graduate, oh yes I can. I go to college and then I will get a good grade for ya. Study and stay up late for ya. I won't even get A's for ya. You know I do anything for ya. Oh, in the same breath, let me say that I'm trying to expand my brain. You can't distract me, baby. I need to educate. Hit the books every night, cause I think it's fun. I like Play-Doh, Newton, ice, how I can learn from anyone. Baby, please, you must see. Someday I will lead. I'll be just like Gandhi, not a bully. I believe in peace. I'm giving all I have to my school, work in this sense, cause my future's in my hands, can't you see? I have a master plan and you've got to understand. I go to college and then I will get a good grade for ya. Study and stay up late for ya. I won't even get A's for ya. You know I do anything for ya. Oh, and you must hear my refrain. Hey, I am loyal to this learning brain. You can't distract me, baby. I need to educate. Let you learn and take it higher. Oh, in school you can't do anything. And I hope you feel inspired so you never, ever, ever quit, baby. Cause darling, I will get a good grade for ya. Study and stay up late for ya. I won't even get A's for ya. You know I do anything for ya. Oh, and I hope you feel the same. When you're scholars with amazing ways, follow your dreams with me, baby. I need to educate. We need to educate. We need to educate. Oh, we need to educate. Oh.
Thank you and good night. Bye-bye, everyone.